pushing him to 8th place.
This is another unusual dive selection here. Corey's finishing this second round of 3 with a back double, back 2 somersaults. It's a foot first entry. Generally in diving, foot first entries are permitted, but there's a bit of a stigma against that if it can be avoided. The judges would like to see head first entry on all the skills.
Cool.
Some twisting skills are okay in the foot first position, but usually the back double, judges would rather see a back 1.5.
Corey Schrock with a 34.10 total for that particular round. Ross Dreyer next from Avon High School.
Ross has been really carrying his weight today. He had a couple surprising dives earlier. I believe he performed a back 2.5 tuck, the only athlete in the contest to do so, and he missed it a little bit. But he came back with an astonishing reverse 2.5 for a lot of points, put himself back in the contest.
40.30 the total, 393.00 for Avon's Ross Dreyer. Next up, Matt Vicky from Heritage Christian.
Now that score for Ross isn't going to hurt him. It's front 2.5 pike. It's got a lot of degree of difficulty. He didn't quite pull in a pike position well enough to secure a good midair pike, but he did complete the dive over the water. Matthew Veek, this is very pretty, back 1.5 somersaults with 1/2 twist. He's given up a little bit of degree of difficulty here, but he's going to see a lot of judges' points to help make up for that calculation.
Got him there, 7s and 8s, so plenty, a low of 6.5, 47.25 for a total now after 10 rounds of 412.05. Spurlock from Crawfordsville next.
Matthew made a dive substitution there for his last dive. He had a reverse twister in the list. He's been running over 100 fever this week and just didn't feel up to putting in that more difficult skill. That was a gamble. I think that paid off for him pretty well. Jason performed a reverse dive pike. Very strong and agile diver. He could make many somersaults over the water, and he could certainly perform powerful jumps. A little bit lacking in the voluntary area, showing nice body lines, control, and aesthetic beauty, and coming in and out of the dive without losing form.
A low of 4.5 and a high of 6.0, 25.40 the total. Next up, Casey Johnson, his second dive. Casey from Indian Creek.
And he nails it. I can't tell you folks how rare it is to sit here and watch an athlete dive 21 skills in a row and not miss a single dive over the last 2 years of state meets. And Casey is on pace to do 22 rounds without missing a single dive. An amazing performance for an underclassman, and certainly a rare thing to experience for an underclassman.
Racked up 50 points, gives him a total of 415.85. Judge number 4 with a 5.0. His low there, his high judge 7, giving him a 7.0. Next up, Hank Dussard, the sophomore from Bedford North Lawrence.
Little known fact here, Hank did a pretty nice back dive here, a little loose in his knees. His club coach, very exciting figure here in Indiana, Mark Lindsay, he's hanging up in our wall of champions. There's 2 divers hanging. One is Greg Luganis. Many of you may be familiar, a 4-time gold medalist. And Mark Lindsay, a 3-meter springboard gold medalist here for the United States, is coaching in Indiana. Hank is one of his students.
30 points in the round for him, 30.40. Kyle Frabel from Homestead High School up next. His total 348.55 coming into the round.
Overall impressive jump and pike position, great position in space. The dive didn't go out too far. Kyle threw for this dive a little bit wide with his arms, so he didn't quite get enough rotation to finish vertical. The front 2.5 pike went in a little bit short of vertical.
Pushes him to 3rd on the leaderboard, just in front of Jimmy Page with his 45.50 total. 394.05 for Kyle Frabel. Next up, the second dive for Jerry Schaefer of Bremen High School.
See, Jerry's got some tape on his left foot here. He was warming up on Thursday night doing multiple bounces on the diving board. Landed on the corner of the diving board where it recoiled uncomfortably underneath his foot. And it's been apparently a sore area ever since. Now, this was a rather off-balance takeoff, slightly unstable, not too uncommon. Divers get to their final rounds here. They might be hiding a loose cannon dive here at the end. It's not too uncommon to see an athlete perhaps with some off-balance, shaky takeoffs here towards the end of the contest.
And you can see the scores there. A low of 1.5, his high score of 3.5. Just 16.90 in the round. His total 328.95 for Jerry Schaefer. Next up, Brody Carter from Valparaiso.
Brody's a big boy in the contest. Usually divers are small to medium-sized individuals, and this boy is rather large. He's got a lot of size to him in terms of height and some bulk as well. There are some advantages. You could put the board down further than a lighter diver. You could ride the board higher. However, when it comes down to it, if you've got more mass on the body, it's more difficult to make the number of somersaults required to finish a dive like this, front 2.5 pike.
2.5 the low, 5.0 the high, 28.60 for the round, 361.35 for Brody Carter. Next up, Tyler Klingerman, the junior from Plainfield.
Strength has its value. In the sport of diving, I think a wiry capacity of strength is preferred over a bulk mass type of situation. It seems that the students who are thin and quick are able to complete their somersaults and go in the water without a relative lot of splash. Tyler, on a reverse twister here again, very difficult dives, sometimes reserved towards the end of the contest. This skill was not quite finished over the water. He didn't reach through vertical on the start to let his feet come up high enough, finish his twist, but he didn't have enough energy to put the dive in vertical. He was short.
4s and 5s, 36.40, 419.05, thrust him to the top. But again, we're just a little over halfway through. Jimmy Page of Crown Point up next.
This is going to be a rather impressive final score for a lot of athletes. A solid amount of boys are well up over 400 points already, and we've got another round. This is huge. This is a front double twisting 1.5, a lot of degree of difficulty, and Jimmy put this in like a voluntary dive. He squared out, lifted his hips, and he just disappeared into the water.
Boy, what a round. 8s and 8.5s, an impressive 66.30 round. Page to the top, 459.50. He hit a home run there.
Jimmy's an interesting kid. He's quietly confident. He's the nicest kid you could talk to on deck, and he just calmly shares with folks this year, his senior year, having taken second place last year, that he's simply going to bring his A game, and he's lived up to that.
Cade Ingram, we should say. No, I'm right. Ingram Cade from Carmel with that particular dive.
Ingram, again, very well performance. This is a back 1.5 half. We noticed it didn't have quite the height that Jimmy showed us on his performance, but his mechanics are accurate. He spun well, he squared out and put the dive in vertical. So the judges are going to be in the 6 area for a dive that doesn't have an impressive jump, but is successful.
Ryland Ridenauer next up from Lebanon, the senior.
Ryland did a nice job, reverse 1.5 pike. Certainly better than the earlier reverse and has we've seen in this final 3 rounds here. Ryland didn't quite put the dive in the water without a splash. He moved his hands up towards the water a little early and contacted some splash there in the back of the shoulders. But a very good jump and performance on the reverse 1/2 pike.
50.40 thrust him to second on the leaderboard, 425.90. Justin Kramer from Michigan City, the junior, up next.
Foot first entry, again, not preferred by the judging panel. They'd like to see an athlete learn the additional skill sets that it takes to put the dive in on your head. However, looking at the degree of difficulty, if there's too much of a risk that you're going to land somewhere in the 2 to 3 area with judges' points, it's definitely a good idea to put a foot first entry in. And these scores are okay. He's over 40 points on a foot first entry.
4.485 total, 353.60. Next up, Zach Robbins from Huntington North.
Now, Zach set this dive up terrific. He was on balance at the end of the board. He could have lifted his knee a little higher in the approach, but he showed the jump, and the dive and twist was completed relatively easy with enough time. However, he dropped his chin after one twist, which makes the dive look a little bit asymmetrical coming around the corner for the finish.
From 4.5 to 6.5, 45.50 the total, 363.05. Evan Crowder rounds out round 2 from Carmel.
Evan's been having a terrific day. Great performance here. That's just gorgeous. Inward 1.5 pike. He may have lost his legs a little bit, which means they may have come apart slightly in his finishing move. But as far as the jump quality and the midair pike position, that is a beautiful dive.
6s and 7s, 46.80 total score after the round, 387.85 gets him on the leaderboard of the top 8.